Hello everybody, and welcome to a Deck Tech here on the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel. I am Spencer. I am the host of Mythicast, creator of the Constructive Criticism Network and owner. And I'm really excited today to talk to you about a deck that I think is good. I have been winning with it, but not as much as another deck, and we'll kind of get into that. But I actually think this deck is really good and a really interesting innovation in Historic. Now that we have Historic Jumpstart, I think that we've seen some pretty cool changes. So, before we get too far into this deck, which I'm sure you can see on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, take your screenshot, but the deck list will be in the show notes, so don't worry about it too much. Before we get too far into it, let's talk about our sponsor over at PureMTGO.com. They are the best place to go for Magic content for up-and-coming creators. Their sponsor over at MTGO Traders is amazing. As somebody who's currently juggling what their future is in Magic content, I'm probably about to hit up MTGO Traders a lot more, play more MTGO here in the next couple months as my priorities change. And as I do that, I really think about just how great that is and how great my sponsorship for years has been with PureMTGO.com. So check them out. And don't forget to head on over to the Heezy Game Media Discord. The Constructive Criticism Network is part of Heezy Game Media. And the Discord is full of people talking about Star Wars, tabletop RPGs, Magic the Gathering, Valheim, just video games, books. Like, if you're into nerd culture, which if you're a Magic player, you probably are, it's a great place to talk to other people who probably share interests with you. So, with that being said, let's get into this deck tech on Gruul Shamans. So first, we're going to lead off with the deck list. So first off, we have one Spike Feed Hazard. This is really taking the place of a land. I want to call that out really quickly. I wanted more 1-drops, but needed something that either cost 0 or 1. And Spike Feed Hazard just does a really good job of taking place of a land. Pretty good against other Land of Werewolf decks and things like that. So yeah, it's taking the place of the land as you don't have a ton of 1-drops. So it coming into play tap doesn't hurt you as bad. But it is just straight up taking the place of a mountain. We have 4 Land of Werewolves. This is one of our very few non-shaman creatures, but just the mana advantage from Land of Werewolves, so good that you have to have it in your deck. We have 4 Harmonic Prodigy, so this is actually basically the reason this deck is even being created. So this card is 1 and a red. It's a 1/3 human wizard with prowess. We don't actually have too many spells in our deck. I mean, if we just look, we have, our Bonecrusher Giants, our Collected Companies, our Chandra, our Embercleave, and then kind of our 2 land spells. That's actually not what this card is for. It is its second ability of, if an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control. Key here is it is another wizard. This doesn't just have double prowess. That ability triggers an additional time. So if we look here, our first shaman, Elvish Visionary. It's a 1/1. There's the battlefield, you draw a card. You got this in play, you draw 2. Fauna Shaman. This one actually doesn't work. This is not an ability that triggers. This is an activated ability. But I think that Fauna Shaman being able to just find other things and just being a shaman for some of the other cards in our deck, pretty good. Resilient Kenra. Not a shaman, but is a wizard. And it really synergizes well with some of the other cards. It is 1 and a green free, 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may have target creature get +X/+X, where X is its power. And then it has Eternalize for 4 and 2 green. This card, pretty good with some of our other cards. We just already mentioned Fauna Shaman. Being able to discard this to Fauna Shaman is sweet. And then there are other things that we can do with it. As well as, double triggers off of Harmonic Prodigy. Burning Tree Emissary is next. This is a human shaman. It's a 2/2. It ETBs and creates red and a green. This card's pretty good in this deck. Shadow Skull Smashing, another one that's replacing a land, but in this case, it also acts as kind of a removal spell, especially when you get a bunch of Burning Tree Emissaries into play. Sometimes you'll just be able to wipe, 2 of your big creatures out from your opponent and things like that. We have 4 Bonecrusher Giants in this deck. I don't know if this number is correct. I don't know if we need more spell slots in this deck, but, Stomp kills creatures, be nasty, stuff like that. It also is pretty good with Collected Company. So, next we have Rage Forge. This is a card that kind of makes this deck tick in a lot of ways. If we look at this card, it is 1 red and 2 for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on each shaman you control. Each other, I believe, even. Yeah, each other shaman you control. And then whenever a creature you control with a 1/1 counter attacks, you may have it deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. So this CTBs, if this is in play, it gives 2 to all your other shamans, and then whenever any of your shamans attack, any of them at all, if this is in play, you're dealing 2 to the player. It's pretty good. Seasoned Pyromancer is next. It's one of those cards that, we mentioned Swana Shaman. Its ability was Resilient Kenra. Seasoned Pyromancer is the same thing. This is going to discard your Resilient Kenras, your excess lands. Sorry about that. Things like that just create huge advantages for you. It also comes back from the graveyard itself. So if you want to discard this to Fauna Shaman, you can, stuff like that. It's pretty powerful. When this card was printed in Modern Masters, it was talked about like crazy. Obviously, it didn't see as much play as we thought it would there, but it is still really powerful. Next, we have 1 Klothys, God of Destiny. There's 1 more on the board, but I think this card's pretty good, especially in this deck where you have things like Burning Tree Emissary, Chandra, Seasoned Pyromancer, so lots of double pips to really activate your Klothys. And also this card is just really good in this format overall. We do have 1 Chandra for card advantage and removal and kind of just evening the deck out, giving it kind of this ability to play a mid-range game, even though it is kind of this combo-esque aggro deck in a lot of ways. And then 4 Collected Company. There's not a single creature in this deck that costs more than 3 mana. There are 31 creatures in this deck. This card is going to double hit all the time. It's very powerful. It's one of the best Collected Company decks I've played in a long time. We do have 1 Embercleave. This is something that is a recent addition to the deck. I think that just the threat of Embercleave and being able to close out games really quickly when you look at the way that the games play out lets you close out games in a lot of different ways. This could be another spell in a different slot, but I think Embercleave makes a lot of sense. So before we get into the sideboard, which I'm going to hide really quick, I just want to talk about kind of the key cards. So the first key card is Collected Company. This makes a lot of sense for the deck. One of the key things to think about when you're playing this card is how you are stacking your cards and how the triggers are happening. There are tons of things that you can be doing with Collected Company, right? Quickly giving your creatures stuff with Rage Forger, end of turn drawing other cards, giving, +2/+2 or with Resilient Kenra. There is so much going on with this card in this deck specifically. Now, honestly, it is a key factor in this deck. I would say the other card that's like a key factor, we've already talked about it a little bit, Harmonic Prodigy, is able to enable this deck to do kind of broken things, in all honesty, compared to where you might, play some of these cards you might think, Elvish Visionary seems weak in this format, but honestly, Elvish Visionary is totally fine in this format, but it's really good with Harmonic Prodigy. And when you combine those 2 cards, oh man, sorry, not Elvish Visionary, but Harmonic Prodigy and Collected Company, you just kind of pull ahead in a lot of ways. Once this Prodigy's in play, these companies do a lot of damage, quote unquote. Not damage to your opponent's face as much, but really damage to, well, they do a lot of damage to basically the state of the game, and it's really powerful and something that I think that's kind of a key factor. And then, honestly, I would say that the third kind of key card for the deck, in all honesty, is actually Rage Forger. I know that sounds weird. This is not a card that I expect to be this high on, but other than a few decks that we'll kind of get into when we talk about sideboarding plans and things like this, Rage Forger just, takes over the game the second it hits play when you're playing this deck. So, but yeah, really quickly before we move on to the mana and things like that, the way that you win in this deck is really, you have this aggressive game plan with Burning Tree Emissary, Resilient Kenra, Rage Forger, and Collected Company, but also you just are able to grind your opponents out with things like Seasoned Pyromancer, Rage Forger, Harmonic Prodigy, Elvish Visionary, Brazilian Kenra. You often have a ton to do with your mana, and if we just kind of pull up this list here, there's only 21 lands in the deck, quote unquote. It's really 23 when you look at Scatter Skull Smashing and Spike Feed Hazard that are kind of acting as lands, as well as, you've got Llanowar and Burning Tremissary to give you excess mana, things like that. But the deck is super aggressive, but also is able to grind out. It is quite the powerful combination. The mana is interesting. I don't know that this mana base is correct, but here's what we have so far. We have 2 mountains, 3 realm and up ruins, 3 forest, 3 Hotship Oasis, 4 Timber Crown Pathway into Crag Crown Pathway, 2 Rootbound Crag, and 4 Stomping Grounds. I have literally never activated a Hotship Oasis or a Ramen Up Ruins. One of the things we'll talk about is cards that we would consider over this, and I actually do have some cards that I'm thinking about to change this mana base up, as you don't really need these. The Ramen Up Ruins make sense, but these Hotship Oases might actually not matter as much in this deck, and we'll talk about why later. Some of the key lands in the deck, for what it's worth, are I think the spell lands, to be honest. I think that just being able to, the fact that you only have Llanowar means that these spell lands, these red spell lands that can enter the battlefield tapped, or even this one entering the battlefield untapped, are kind of a key for the deck to really maximize the number of spell slots, but still get the most out of your collected companies. One of the coolest interactions for the deck, as we're kind of going through these show notes, is honestly like, the ability to bring back different, really synergize with your Harmonic Prodigy. Whether it's, a Burning Tremissary creating 4 mana the turn you play it to play Collected Company, to, when you have 2 of these in play and you play a Rage Forger, your opponent is just dead. If you have enough Shamans in play, they're taking so much damage so quickly, it's actually kind of unreal. And then also, Seasoned Pyromancer discarding Brazilian Kenra, Fauna Shaman discarding Brazilian Kenra, stuff like that. It really adds up to real card advantage, and also, things to do with your mana late when you get flooded, which is just something that, between Seasoned Pyromancer and Brazilian Kenra, you wouldn't have in these Collected Company decks without cards like this. Next up, let's talk about the sideboard. We have 1 Abrade, 2 Rolling Vortex, 3 Goblin Rootmaster. Realize that Goblin Rootmaster is a shaman. So if you kick this for 4 mana, which is pretty easy when you think about, if you go turn 2, Harmonic Prodigy, turn 3, Burning Tremissary, you can Goblin Runemaster kill 2 of their lands if they have that, because you get the 4 mana plus the extra mana. I mean, it is absolutely nuts when you think about the abilities of Goblin Runemaster plus Harmonic Prodigy. We have a Reclamation Stage, another Shaman. You're able to kill an enchantment and an artifact, two artifacts, 2 enchantments, whatever. Run Afoul is next. This is a key sideboard card. Right now, if you were to ask me the best deck in Historic, I would say that it is the... oh man, I'm just going to pull it up as we're talking about this. I don't know that I made any changes, but I think that it is this Jeskai Creativity deck. I think that Indomitable Creativity is completely busted, especially when you add Heart Evidence, things like that. And, one of the... Oh, I need to pull that back up. One of the key cards in this deck is the Sarah's Embassy. So it's a 7/7 that gives you protection from a thing of your choice, and you and your creatures. And one of the things that Run Afoul does is it plays around that protection. So if they're giving their Sarah protection from instants, you're still able to run afoul, make them sacrifice that creature with flying, and get in with your creatures. I've already won games doing it. It's pretty powerful. Next we have 2 Burning Hands, a Fry, another Clothis, and 2 Ox of Agonis. I think this sideboard is a work in progress. There's a ton of things going on in this format right now. There are things that, I'm probably never going to cut. Like Rolling Vortex is probably just hands down staying in. The Oxes, the Clothis, but the Burning Hounds, the Run Afouls, the Reclamation Sage, the Goblin Rune Blasters, even the Abrade. These are things that can change according to how this format shakes out and what become the best deck. But what I see with this deck is a deck that is aggressive, has a combo element, has, staying power, things like that. And it all really adds up to a pretty powerful deck overall. Some of the things that I would consider moving forward, I talked about how I've never activated either of these desert lands. You get a lot of creatures in play in this deck, between Seasoned Pyromancer, Burning Tremistry, stuff like that. Castle Umbreth is definitely a card that you can consider. You can play more mountains. Things like that would be a huge addition to this deck. The Green God, the Ronus, is another one. Scavenging Ooze is not in this 75. Those are some of the cards that you can kind of think about as you're moving forward, as well as just any new Shamans or Wizards that are printed. Maybe I'm missing like a pretty huge one, but that's kind of what we're thinking moving forward. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. I don't know if this deck is as exciting as I think it is, but I'm winning with it. I think it's strong. I don't think it's as good as the Creativity deck right now, but I think that it has the ability to kind of play against the best decks, really punish people for trying to be too cute, things like that. So thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Don't forget to check out the rest of the network, whether it's Mythic Cast with me and Michaela, Constructive Criticism with Mason and Abe, Drafting Archetypes, Homeward Path, Common Knowledge. We've got an awesome network of podcasts here on the YouTube channel, as well as at ConstructiveCriticism.com. You can find me at Spencer13H. And don't forget to like, sub, and review for more content like this. I plan on doing these deck decks weekly again. This one was really fun. This is a deck I'm excited about. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching, and we'll see you guys all next time with another video here on the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel.